An unexpected turn of events occurs. During a modern police station's emergency call response, the police officers open fire on the suspect, while sternly ordering him to raise his hands and surrender. But when the other party slowly turns around, everyone is stunned by the sight before them. This suspect has no head. The scene flashes back to the battlefield of the American Revolutionary War in 1781. On the smoke-shrouded battlefield, a knight in red armor wields a giant axe, displaying astonishing combat power. Captain Crane, under George Washington's command, decisively shoots and knocks the knight off his horse, but the knight survives the gunshot. Instead, he gets up and stabs Crane through the chest. In the critical moment, Crane swings his sword and cuts off the knight's head. Both fall to the ground, severely injured. Their blood accidentally mixes, and their fates become tightly intertwined from that point on. 250 years later, the Headless Horseman awakens from the river in Sleepy Hollow, riding a white horse and holding a giant axe in his hand. He swears to retrieve his head before sunset. First, he finds the priest who once sealed his head. After failing to get information through interrogation inside the church, he cuts through the enchanted chains the priest used to bind him. Finally, he angrily cuts off the priest's head. Officer Abby and her partner rush to the scene after receiving the call. They split up to investigate in the stable. As soon as Abby finds a headless corpse, and is about to inform her partner via walkie-talkie, she hears gunshots ring out inside the stable. She hurries over and witnesses her partner being decapitated by the Headless Horseman with a single axe strike. After that, the horseman rides his white horse through the door and flees. At the same time, Crane, in a cave in Sleepy Hollow, is unexpectedly resurrected. He crawls out of the cave and reaches the highway. He is filled with shock at the sight of speeding trucks and modern buildings. Just as he is trying to make sense of this unfamiliar world, he is spotted by Officer Andy, who is on his way to back up Abby. Seeing Crane's strange clothing, Andy mistakes him for a suspect, and takes him back to the police station. When Abby returns to the station, she only glances at Crane and denies that he is the killer, although both wear old military uniforms. The Headless Horseman wears a red military uniform, and has a bow and arrow-shaped brand on his hand. Upon hearing this description, Crane wears an expression of disbelief. He immediately recognizes this as the red armored knight, whose head he cut off back in the day. Crane seems to recall a clue about the killer, so the police officers release him from the jail cell, and conduct a more in-depth questioning of him. Crane then tells the police about his identity. After his battle with the Headless Horseman back then, he fell into a coma. When he woke up again, he found himself in a tomb. He didn't even realize he was in a different era. He has no idea what exactly happened in between. To verify the truthfulness of Crane's words, the police even use a polygraph. Although Crane's story sounds extremely unbelievable, and 250 years have passed, the polygraph shows no signs of deception the entire time. However, the sheriff still refuses to believe Crane. He even thinks Crane is mentally ill, so he decides to send Crane to a mental hospital for custody. But Abby believes the matter is not that simple. After all, she witnessed her partner being decapitated with her own eyes, and she also saw the Headless Horseman in person. In order to find the real truth, Abby secretly takes Crane out of the police station without her superior's knowledge. The two of them head to the tomb where Crane first woke up. After searching together for a while, Crane finds a Bible in the soil. The book tells the story of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. They are known to the world as the horsemen of death. Each of them has a bow and arrow brand on their hand. This matches the mark on the Headless Horseman's hand, so they speculate that the Headless Horseman is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Although everything sounds so fantastical, Abby still trusts Crane and is ready to investigate the truth behind this with him. Because when she was a child, some unexplainable things happened to her too. Back then, when she was playing in the woods with her younger sister, 4 pure white trees suddenly appeared behind them, and beside the trees stood a monster that looked somewhat human. Now, the appearance of the Headless Horseman reminds her of that incident. She has a faint feeling in her heart that this monster and the Headless Horseman must be inseparably connected. One day, Crane wakes up to find a crow standing at the foot of his bed. Following the direction the crow flies away, Crane unexpectedly sees his late wife, Katrina. Katrina tells Crane that her true identity is actually a witch, and she buried the Headless Horseman's head under a tombstone in the church cemetery. All these years, the priest has been guarding it. When their blood mixed and formed a connection back then, Katrina, in order to prevent the Headless Horseman from being resurrected again, and also to save Crane's life, had to cast a spell on both of them at the same time. She put the Headless Horseman's body into a wooden coffin, and sank it to the bottom of the sea, and buried Crane in Sleepy Hollow. The reason the Headless Horseman has awakened is that a stranger is controlling him. Katrina is also trapped in this forest by that person. As soon as she finishes speaking, 4 white trees suddenly appear behind Crane. Katrina tells Crane that time is running out. He must do everything he can to stop the Headless Horseman from finding his head. If the Headless Horseman finds his head, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse will be resurrected along with him, and the disaster they will bring to the world will be catastrophic. Katrina also tells Crane a crucial piece of information. The Headless Horseman's weakness is that he can't survive after sunrise. As soon as he wakes up, Crane tells Abby all the information he learned, and tells her that the Headless Horseman's head is now in the church, to help the two of them, who are outnumbered. Abby uses her position to call Officer Andy, and tells him to take a group of people to the cemetery right away. But as soon as they hang up the phone, the Headless Horseman suddenly appears in front of Andy. To save himself, Andy tells the Headless Horseman where the two of them are. At this time, Abby and Crane have already arrived at the church cemetery. Following Katrina's clues, they dig up a storage container in the cemetery. Inside the container lies a white head. Before the two of them can even react in shock, the Headless Horseman arrives on his warhorse. He immediately opens fire and sprays bullets at the two of them. Crane holds the head and hides behind a tombstone, and Abby hides behind a wall. At this moment, the Headless Horseman walks up to Crane, and is about to shoot him with the gun in his hand. Abby shoots in time, forcing the Headless Horseman to step back. Crane takes this opportunity to jump out from behind the tombstone, and knocks the weapon out of the Headless Horseman's hand with a shovel. At this point, Andy has also arrived at the scene with other police officers. He knocks Abby unconscious and takes her away from the scene, while Crane continues to fight with the Headless Horseman. Crane notices that the Headless Horseman seems to possess strength beyond that of a normal person. No matter how he attacks, the Horseman remains unharmed, so he changes his strategy, picks up the head from the ground, and flees the scene. Crane hides behind a car. He shouts Abby's name loudly, but gets no response. Just as the Headless Horseman is closing in on Crane, reinforcement police officers arrive right after. This is where the opening scene of the movie takes place. Just as the two sides are locked in a stalemate, a ray of sunlight slowly rises in the sky. White smoke immediately starts to rise from the Headless Horseman's body. It turns out, just as Katrina said, the Headless Horseman fears sunlight, so he immediately raises his machine gun, sprays bullets at the police cars in front of him and flees the scene. On the other side, Andy is locked in a cell waiting for interrogation. For betraying the two of them's whereabouts, a monster suddenly appears behind him. Andy is just about to beg for mercy. The monster slaps him, breaking his neck instantly, but that night, in the morgue, he miraculously comes back to life. The camera cuts, and a terrifying scene unfolds. Although he has come back to life, his head is still in a broken, detached state. From the front, he looks just like the Headless Horseman. At this moment, a demon with a goat's head suddenly appears. He chants an incantation, and Andy's neck instantly returns to normal. He orders Andy to resurrect a witch. A fit of retching suddenly comes over Andy. To his shock, Andy pulls a necklace out of his throat. Following the demon's instructions, he goes to an altar. When he places the necklace into the stone pillar in the center, a burst of flames immediately erupts from it. Right after that, a witch steps out from within the flames. Her body is covered in burn marks. Andy delivers a message to the witch as the demon ordered. It turns out this witch was once part of an evil witch coven, but before she was sealed away, she vowed to use the ashes of the Inquisitor's descendants to pay tribute to herself. Now that the seal is broken, the witch has been resurrected. Andy tells the witch that only by killing her enemies can she achieve complete resurrection, and with the witch's resurrection, frequent murders start occurring in the town of Sleepy Hollow. The methods of these murders are extremely brutal. In every case, the victim's chest is torn open, and their heart is missing. The bodies are also burned to a crisp, like lumps of charcoal. It is obvious that all these killings were done by the same person. When Crane arrives at the scene, it immediately reminds him of a murder case that happened hundreds of years ago. Back then, they also didn't believe in ghosts, but on a night of a blood moon, a soldier in the camp was suddenly burned to ashes. His way of death was identical to that of the man in front of them now. At that time, Crane already sensed that an evil spirit was lingering around them. Now it seems that evil spirit has probably reappeared, so the two of them take this case as a clue and start their investigation. Crane and Abby sneak into the police station's archives. In a hidden archive room, they find a book. This book records a lot of ancient and mysterious history. According to what is written in the book, the evil spirit Crane sensed is a witch from hundreds of years ago. Back then, witches were divided into two factions. The kind-hearted witches formed the Sisterhood of the Radiant Heart, while the evil ones were known as the Sisters of the Hollow. These two factions had been fighting against each other constantly. In the end, the leader of the kind-hearted witches used white magic, and stripped all evil witches of their evil hollow powers, bringing the conflict to an end. The kind-hearted witches punished the evil ones using the most cruel flames. Before the execution, the evil witch used her last remaining strength to cast a curse. Every time the blood moon rises, the ashes of her enemies will be used by her, and at that time, she will possess a body in return. So the two of them speculate that all these incidents are the work of the evil witch, because the person who died is a descendant of the Inquisitor from that time. Now the witch has already met the conditions for resurrection. She must be hiding somewhere, preparing for her resurrection ritual. At this moment, Crane remembers what his late wife once told him. The basement of the church is where the witch's remains are sealed, so they speculate that this will be the location where the witch prepares her resurrection. Just as they suspected, at this moment, Andy is digging non-stop in the church basement. Before long, he digs up a sack. Inside the sack are exactly the witch's remains. The witch arranges her remains on the ground in order. She chants incantations while sprinkling the ashes she obtained. After finishing all this, she lies down on her own ashes and waits for resurrection. When Crane and Abby arrive here, they just in time see the witch's body regenerating. They don't even have time to react. The witch has already fully resurrected in her body. Even though they shoot at her with pistols, they can't harm her body. The two of them immediately retreat. On their way here, Crane had discovered a place where explosives are stored. The witch follows the two of them to this place. When the pursuing witch reaches the location of the explosives, Crane immediately throws the torch in his hand onto the explosives, hoping to use the power of the explosives to kill the witch. Unexpectedly, the torch goes out as soon as it hits the ground. Just as the two of them fall into despair, the torch suddenly reignites. The reaction between the fire and the explosives triggers a massive explosion. The witch lets out a shrill scream. In this way, the evil witch is defeated by the two of them working together. However, as one demon is defeated, a new one is about to emerge. Every time night falls, the Sandman enters people's dreams and uses white sand to blind their eyes, causing them to die in endless remorse. However, the police have recently discovered several consecutive cases, and the eyes of the victims in these cases are all white. One day, the police receive a report. A woman is standing on the roof of a building, attempting to commit suicide, but before her death, she specifically asks to talk to Abby. Abby doesn't hesitate and goes up. Immediately, Abby notices that this female doctor's eyes are white, just like the other victims. She tells Abby that she should have believed her sister's words. Everything that is happening now is karmic retribution, and with that, she jumps off the building. Abby is extremely confused, because her younger sister Jenny was admitted to a mental hospital many years ago. In order to figure out what is going on, it seems that only by seeing Jenny can they get the answer. So the two of them go to the mental hospital. However, unexpectedly, Jenny refuses to meet her sister. Instead, she asks Crane to come into the room alone. Jenny tells Crane that the reason she is locked in the mental hospital is all because of her sister. It turns out that many years ago, after they saw the demon next to the 4 white trees in the forest, they passed out. When they woke up again, 4 days had already passed. The first person to find them was a rancher, and the rancher also saw the demon's figure. So he called the police immediately. After the two sisters arrived at the police station, Jenny told the police everything she had seen, including the demon and the 4 strange white trees, but Abby, too scared to tell the truth, claimed that she had seen nothing. Seeing this, Jenny kept begging Abby to tell the truth. As a result, Jenny was finally locked up in a mental hospital, labeled as mentally ill. So all these years, Jenny has been resenting Abby in her heart. She believes that if Abby had told the truth back then, she might not have ended up in the situation she is in now. And the female doctor, who also learned the truth about what happened back then, also chose not to speak up, which led to her current fate. Upon hearing this, Crane immediately went to verify the story with Abby. Abby told him that everything her sister had said was true, so Crane immediately thought of the rancher from back then. Since he had also seen the demon back then, why hadn't he chosen to tell the truth all these years? So the two of them went to the rancher's house, but when they broke through the door and entered, they saw that the rancher was already under the Sandman's control. His eyes also had that eerie white color. He was holding a pistol in his hand. Abby tried to persuade him to put down the gun, but the rancher wouldn't listen, and he told Abby that both he and Jenny were targets of the Sandman, and Abby would be the Sandman's next target. The next time she fell asleep, she would meet the same end as them. Then he immediately shot himself, ending his life. Seeing this scene, Abby immediately became worried. The two people who knew the truth about what happened back then had already lost their lives one after another. Could she be the next one? So the two of them went to the police station's archives again to look for information. According to the information, the Sandman originated from the Mohawk tribe in the 18th century. They have hollow eyes and white skin. At this moment, Crane remembered that among his comrades in arms back then, there was one who was from the Mohawk tribe. During their conversations, he learned that the Mohawk tribe, in order to resist the Sandman's attacks, once used a specific symbol to fend off the Sandman, and for Abby to get through this crisis now, she must find a descendant of the Mohawk tribe. After some twists and turns, they finally found a Mohawk tribesman. However, as soon as he heard their purpose, he immediately refused, and said he didn't want to get involved in their conflict. But Crane didn't give up. He threatened the man, saying that if he didn't help them, he might very well be the Sandman's next target. So the man had to agree to their request. The man took the two of them to a room. He told them that to get rid of the Sandman, they must fight him in their dreams. But they needed to be wary. If they died in the dream, their physical bodies in reality would also die. The two of them agreed to the man's request without hesitation. They drank a bottle of green potion and were tied to the beds by the man. The man and his friend took out a jar, and inside the jar was a small scorpion. Don't underestimate the scorpion, the man told them. The scorpion's venom would allow them to maintain control of their bodies even in their dreams. The two of them entered the dream world. They were not in the same scene in the dream, Crane called out Abby's name loudly in the dream, but unfortunately, Abby had already encountered the Sandman by this time. With a wave of the Sandman's hand, her eyes turned pure white, just like the others, and Abby was taken back to the most terrifying scene of her life, the police interrogation room from back then. This was Abby's worst nightmare. In the dream, the Sandman kept asking her if she had seen the monster, and in the dream, Abby made the same choice as she did back then. She didn't tell the truth. At this moment, watching the scene from the past replay, Abby felt extremely guilty. The Sandman stretched out his finger, trying to take control of Abby. Fortunately, Crane arrived just in time to stop him, but the dream world was the Sandman's domain. With a lift of his hand, the Sandman easily tore off one of Crane's arms. Just as he was about to finish Crane off, Abby suddenly let out a loud cry. She bravely admitted her mistake from back then, and as she spoke the words of admission, the Sandman's body gradually became transparent. Abby overcame her inner fear, defeated the Sandman, and also conquered the demon within herself. After defeating the demon, Abby went to the mental hospital to tell Jenny that she admitted her mistake from back then. Only then did she realize that her sister had already escaped through the ceiling. One day, a little boy was running and playing in the woods. At this moment, he saw a dark rider in front of him, riding a warhorse and charging straight at him. The boy was so scared that he turned around and ran. When the dark rider followed him to a road, the boy hesitated for a moment, then ran straight onto the road. But the dark rider didn't chase him out of the woods. He stopped right there. Within 2 days, the boy was found by the police. Abby and Crane rushed to the scene as soon as they received the news. The two of them noticed that the veins on the boy's hands were black, and he was wearing clothes from hundreds of years ago. This was clearly inconsistent with modern aesthetics. The boy kept repeating the word "witch" over and over again. But the language he spoke wasn't modern English, it was Middle English. It should be noted that this language was only used by people in the Middle Ages, so the two of them immediately started an investigation. But they couldn't find any information about the boy's identity in any missing person records. Crane thought that, like him, the boy might not be from this era. So they went to see the boy again to talk to him. Fortunately, Crane could speak some Middle English. He successfully communicated with the boy. He learned that the boy's name was Thomas, and that he was from a colony called Roanoke. This colony had disappeared as early as 400 years ago, and all its inhabitants had vanished suddenly under mysterious circumstances. Just as the two of them were wondering about the boy's true identity, the hospital's sheriff called them. He told Abby that Thomas's condition had deteriorated rapidly. Many medical staff had also been infected as a result. Black veins had appeared on their arms. It was like an infectious disease. If it was allowed to spread unchecked, the town might face a major epidemic. So Crane and Abby went to the forest where the boy had disappeared to investigate. They found a lake in the forest, and in the middle of the lake was a strange island. Just as the two of them were looking for a way to get to the island in the middle, Crane found a strange symbol carved into a tree. Without hesitation, he walked toward the center of the lake. Just as Abby was about to stop him, something strange happened. Crane didn't sink into the water. Instead, he walked freely on the surface. Crane told Abby that the symbol was a guiding mark. It represented a hidden path. So the two of them walked across the water to the island on the other side. As soon as they stepped onto the island, they were surprised to find that there were many Roanoke people on the island, and each of them had the same black veins as Thomas. When the villagers learned that the two had come for Thomas, they finally told them the truth. It turned out that they were the original Roanoke people from back then. The black veins on their bodies were a result of being attacked by the horsemen of Pestilence back then, and the reason they were still alive was all thanks to the first tribesman who was killed. He had turned into a spirit and guided everyone to find this island. The water source on this island can stop the spread of the virus. Now, the only way to stop the virus from spreading is to bring Thomas back to the island. So after leaving the island, Crane and Abby went straight to the hospital. But at this moment, Crane noticed that black veins had also appeared on his hands. The police then called for personnel to isolate Crane. With her ally gone, Abby found the sheriff and told him everything. She also stated that only by bringing Thomas back to the island could this epidemic truly end. Watching more and more people die from this strange virus. Even though Abby's words sounded unbelievable, after hesitating, the sheriff had to trust Abby. Abby brought the two to the island. However, their conditions deteriorated rapidly. They could barely walk once they entered the forest. At this moment, the Dark Rider suddenly appeared and charged toward them. Abby immediately gave Crane a shot of adrenaline. Crane temporarily regained his strength. So Crane carried Thomas and rushed into the island. Without a word, he held Thomas and jumped into the pool. In the nick of time, the Dark Rider was about to reach the edge of the pool. Crane suddenly emerged from the water with Thomas in his arms, and the Dark Rider turned to ashes. The black veins on Crane's body disappeared right then. The moment the crisis was resolved, the Roanoke colony before their eyes suddenly turned into an overgrown wilderness. It turned out that the appearance of Thomas and his people was just an illusion created by the Horseman of Pestilence. He had wanted to use Crane to spread his virus in the town, and thus restore his own body, but his plan was shattered by Crane and Abby. After defeating the Horseman of Pestilence, Crane went to the cemetery to visit his late wife. but unexpectedly, he was ambushed and taken away by a group of mysterious people. At this time, Abby found herself in front of a strange house. In the center of the house was a baby stroller. Following the sound of a baby's cry, she slowly approached the stroller, but when she reached the stroller and looked inside, she found that there was no baby inside, only a doll. At this moment, the Headless Horseman suddenly appeared behind her. She ran as fast as she could and hid in a room inside the house. However, there were 4 witches dressed in black sitting in the room. It seemed they were performing some kind of ritual. At this moment, Katrina suddenly appeared. She told Abby that the reason she had led her here was because she had sensed that Crane had been kidnapped. This was the only way she could contact Abby, and urge her to rescue Crane immediately. She told Abby to find the Redeemer. He could separate the fates of Crane and the Headless Horseman. Just as Abby was about to ask who the Redeemer was, a sudden burst of white light shone. Abby returned to the real world once again. Early the next morning, Abby immediately started investigating the identity of the Redeemer. After a series of screenings, they discovered that the Redeemer had been living under the stolen identity of a death row inmate. Later, Abby and her sister Jenny found the Redeemer's location. According to the address, they directly stated their purpose and explained the predicament they were facing. They hoped he could help them break the connection between Crane and the Headless Horseman, but the Redeemer refused them. It turned out that the Redeemer had an innate special ability. He could read people's minds by touching them. But over time, the Redeemer had seen a lot of negative information in many people's minds. This long-term exposure to negative information had become unbearable for him, so he chose to retire and live in seclusion in this house. Just as the Redeemer was about to leave, he accidentally touched Abby's body. Immediately, images of the place where Crane was being held appeared in his mind. That place was the headquarters of the Covenant, and Crane was there, talking to a member of the Covenant. It turned out that Crane had long been a member of the Covenant, but the members of the Covenant didn't trust him, because there had once been demons disguised as humans among them. So Crane had to talk about the process of joining the Freemasons back then, hoping to gain their trust through this. It turned out that he had accidentally met a Covenant member named Arthur in the past, and through Arthur, he had learned about the existence of demons. After listening to Arthur's words, Crane thought Arthur wasn't a bad person, so he secretly set him free. Before leaving, Arthur told Crane the Freemasons' member password as a reward, but unfortunately, Arthur didn't manage to escape successfully. It turned out that the captain of Crane's army had discovered Arthur's escape, so he killed Arthur. Crane then drew his sword and stabbed it into the captain's body. It was at this moment that the captain revealed his true form. It turned out he was a demon. Only then did Crane realize that he had been working for a demon all along. After this incident, Crane was overwhelmed with pain, so he went to the Freemasons with a guilty heart and joined them as a member. After listening to Crane's account, the Freemasons finally believed that Crane was one of them. But unfortunately, because Crane's fate was tied to the Headless Horseman's, to completely destroy the Headless Horseman, they could only truly eliminate him by ending Crane's life. So, the Freemasons offered him a drug, and told him that this would put an end to everything. At the critical moment, Abby arrived at the scene. Crane told Abby everything, and told her that only by ending his own life could the Headless Horseman's dark plot be stopped. So after saying goodbye, Crane drank the potion without hesitation, and his consciousness began to fade. Just then, the Redeemer arrived at the scene. He pricked Crane's palm and learned the crucial truth. It turned out that the Headless Horseman had used Crane's guilt over Arthur from back then to bind their fates tightly together. To save Crane, the Redeemer summoned Arthur's soul. With Arthur's help, Crane resolved the guilt in his heart, and separated his own fate from the Headless Horseman's. On the other side, the Headless Horseman didn't give up searching for his head. At that time, Crane and Abby had hidden the head. They had hidden it on police premises to protect it, and the Headless Horseman soon found this place. A doctor was conducting research on the Headless Horseman's head. Suddenly, the Headless Horseman broke in and killed the doctor, so the sheriff immediately took the head and fled. He then found Crane and Abby, and saw the Headless Horseman with his own eyes. Only then did the sheriff believe that everything Crane and Abby had said before was true, so the sheriff decided to report the truth to the governor immediately, and ask him to send reinforcements. Meanwhile, Abby and Crane decided to destroy the head. This way, the Headless Horseman would no longer have a chance to be whole again. But no matter if they used a heavy hammer, high-strength sulfuric acid, or powerful explosives, the head remained intact. While the two were looking for other ways to destroy the head, Crane accidentally discovered that there were 4 lanterns hanging in the distance. During the war, this was a code for sending signals. The number of lanterns indicated different ways the enemy was approaching. To figure out the meaning behind the 4 lanterns, the two went to the rooftop where the lanterns were hanging. At this moment, they were shocked to find that these 4 lanterns were made from human heads. Crane immediately realized this was the Headless Horseman's doing. and Abby found traces of mercury being poured into the heads. This reminded Crane of a scene he had experienced in the past. It turned out that his team had also poured mercury into lanterns back then, to enhance the lantern's brightness. However, during one occasion, Crane had seen the general hand a document to a Freemason member. It was a manuscript written by the Freemasons. The heptagram symbol on it was a mark for defeating demons. Now it seemed that the method to defeat the demon was likely hidden in that manuscript, so the two went to the library to find the manuscript from back then, only to learn that the manuscript had long been borrowed by another country. But fortunately, someone had uploaded the content of this manuscript online. However, the content of the manuscript had long been encrypted with special symbols by the Freemasons. No one except their members could decrypt it. Luckily, as a member of the Freemasons, Crane could easily understand and decrypt these symbols, so he began to decrypt the symbols. But decrypting the symbols required a lot of time, so while waiting, Abby answered a call at the door. At this moment, a figure appeared behind her. Abby immediately turned around vigilantly and fought back, only to find that the figure was Andy. Andy was actually unharmed even after being attacked, so Abby quickly realized Andy had joined the demon's side. At this moment, Crane suddenly appeared. He told Andy to pass a message to the Headless Horseman. If the horseman wanted to get his head back, he should come to the cemetery to find him that night. The reason Crane was so confident was that he had deciphered the Freemasons' manuscript and learned the way to destroy the Headless Horseman, which was to use sunlight in a witch. At night, a witch could cast a spell to turn the night light into sunlight, thereby destroying the Headless Horseman. But there were no more witches in this world. At this moment, Abby thought of blacklights. With the help of modern technology, blacklights might be able to simulate the effect of the sun during the day, so Crane, Abby, and the sheriff set up a trap in the cemetery. When night fell, the Headless Horseman arrived at the cemetery. Crane took the Headless Horseman's head and led him all the way to the trap. Unexpectedly, Crane and the others' plan actually succeeded. With the help of the blacklights, they captured the Headless Horseman. To communicate with the Headless Horseman, they brought Andy over. Because Andy had made a deal with the demons before, he could communicate with the Headless Horseman. During the conversation, Crane finally learned that everything the Headless Horseman had done was to target him. He stepped forward angrily and grabbed the Headless Horseman by the collar. A necklace fell out of the horseman's collar. Crane recognized that it was his wife Katrina's necklace, so he pressed the horseman to explain why the necklace was on him. But the Headless Horseman refused to speak. He only told Crane that everything he had done to him was to avenge Abraham. This matter dated back to hundreds of years ago. It turned out that Katrina had once been Abraham's fiancée, and Crane and Abraham had once been best friends. That necklace was a gift that Crane had helped Abraham choose for Katrina. However, at a gathering, Katrina had confessed her feelings to Crane. Crane also had feelings for Katrina, but out of consideration for his friendship with Abraham, he thought he couldn't act on those feelings. Doing so would be betraying his brother. But it wasn't long before Abraham found out about this. He believed that Crane had seduced Katrina, so he drew his sword and wanted to duel with Crane. But Crane didn't want to hurt his friend, so he pretended to fall to the ground, pretending to be no match for Abraham, and wanted to end his own life this way. At this moment, Abraham was suddenly shot. A group of knights in red suddenly appeared in front of them. Crane wanted to take Abraham with him and flee, but Abraham shouted loudly for Crane to leave first and find reinforcements. So Crane had to leave. However, at this moment, the entire city's power system suddenly collapsed. Without the help of the blacklights, the Headless Horseman's power was recovering. Andy suddenly took out a compass filled with skulls and began to chant an incantation. A large number of monsters suddenly appeared around the cell. Just as the two of them became aware of the situation, the Headless Horseman had already regained all his power. He broke the chains binding him. The Headless Horseman took out two long swords and threw one of them to Crane. During their fight, Crane noticed that the fighting moves of the person in front of him were the same as Abraham's. Only then did he realize that the Headless Horseman in front of him was Abraham. It turned out that Abraham had not died back then. Instead, he had encountered Moloch, the Lord of Demons. He had traded his soul with the Demon Lord to become one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and the condition of the deal was to let him have Katrina. That was why Katrina's soul had been imprisoned all this time. But just as the Headless Horseman was about to kill Crane, Andy, following Moloch's order, stopped the Headless Horseman and took him away. Crane couldn't understand why the Demon Lord would help him like this. Crane thought that only Katrina could give the answer to all this. Abby told Crane. It turned out that Katrina had once given birth to a son for him. But when Katrina was giving birth to their son, she was attacked by a tree demon. All this was what Abby had accidentally seen when she met Katrina back then. Learning that he still had a son, Crane was overjoyed, but Abby didn't know what had happened afterwards. At this moment, a scream suddenly rang out. The two rushed to the source of the scream, and found that the tree demon had taken a woman hostage. In the darkness, Crane spotted a tree root. Abby immediately shot at the tree root. These tree roots were connected to the tree demon. Abby kept shooting, smashing the tree roots to pieces. The tree demon was also injured and let go of the woman. Just as the two were about to leave the manor after rescuing the woman, Crane picked up his weapon and prepared to go back to the villa. This was the very tree demon that had attacked his wife and son back then. How could he let it go? Crane took an axe and returned to the manor. He swung wildly at the tree roots in the manor. Unexpectedly, he managed to hack the tree demon to death. After returning home, Crane found the Redeemer, hoping to connect with Katrina through him. But the Redeemer told him that this kind of connection was extremely dangerous. If there was any mistake, Crane would die. But for the sake of his wife and son, Crane wasn't afraid and decided to take the risk. So the Redeemer had no choice but to agree to help Crane. With the Redeemer's help, Crane arrived in a church. As soon as he got there, he saw a baby stroller. Inside the stroller was a strange doll. It was exactly the same doll Abby had seen before. At this moment, Katrina suddenly appeared behind him. Katrina was extremely surprised to see Crane. It turned out that this church was Moloch's territory. He had imprisoned Katrina's soul here. Katrina told Crane the truth about what had happened back then. It turned out that Katrina had successfully given birth to their son, Jeremy. But because she had secretly used witchcraft to save Crane, she was chased by the coven of witches. She had to send their son away, so Crane promised that he would find their son and rescue Katrina. Along with a loud crash, at the moment the golem broke in, Crane's consciousness returned to reality. It turned out that the golem's origin was their son, Jeremy. After Jeremy was sent away back then, whenever he cried, huge flames would appear around him. When he grew up, people regarded him as a monster. The priest at the orphanage not only refused to feed him, but also often whipped him. Over time, Jeremy's personality became distorted. By chance, he used his own blood to activate the doll his mother had given him. This doll transformed into a golem and became Jeremy's guardian. It followed Jeremy's orders and killed everyone who had harmed his mother. Now, along with Crane's arrival, the golem had been released from purgatory together. With him, his first target after being released would be the 4 witches who had chased Katrina back then, so they found the hiding place of the 4 witches based on clues. The 4 witches recognized Crane's identity at a glance, and told him that their son Jeremy was being chased by the 4 of them, and had been sealed in the cemetery. Crane was extremely angry, but the golem had already chased here. He had to suppress his anger and ask the witches how to kill the golem. The witches told him that the golem was created by Jeremy, and only Jeremy's blood could destroy it. Crane immediately told Abby and the Redeemer this information. While they were searching for the person in hiding, the golem suddenly broke through a mirror and rushed out. Crane was accidentally hit by a shard of glass. When the Redeemer saw the blood, he immediately thought of a way to subdue the golem. Since Jeremy was Crane's son, he must have Crane's blood running through his veins. Therefore, Crane's blood could also destroy the golem. Crane immediately held up the bloodstained glass and began to talk to the golem. He knew that the golem was only doing all this because it was following Jeremy's orders, and the reason Jeremy had given such orders was because he had grown up without a father. Over the years, the golem had guarded Jeremy. Not only was it Jeremy's only friend, more often than not, it had also made up for the absence of Crane. It had taken on the role of a father. Crane was deeply grateful to the golem for accompanying and protecting his son all those years. He then told the golem that Jeremy was no longer here now, and that it could let go of those orders. The golem was inevitably moved by these words, so it grabbed Crane's hand and threw itself onto the bloodstained glass. After the golem fell, Crane held the golem's hand tightly. At this moment, his feelings were extremely complicated. Even though the golem had killed people, it had also acted as a father in his place for all those years, always accompanying and protecting his son Jeremy. And the golem transformed back into a doll. At this moment, Crane suddenly fainted and entered a dream. Moloch issued a warning to him. After waking up, he told Abby about this. At the same time, the sheriff received a strange phone call. The person on the phone told him to get a Bible and hand it over, otherwise, he would harm the sheriff's daughter. After hanging up the phone, the sheriff found Crane and Abby and told them about the call. Crane deduced that the demon was in such a hurry to get the Bible back. There must be important content in it, content that they hadn't discovered yet. The sheriff didn't give in to the demon's threat. Instead, he decided to let Crane and Abby carefully study the content of the Bible, while he himself took his family to a safer place. On the other side, Abby found a video in a file. The video showed a police officer performing an exorcism, but the person being exorcised was her sister Jenny. Jenny's eyes were rolled back, and her face showed a ferocious expression. She looked like someone possessed by a demon. The officer took out a cross and kept chanting incantations, but it was clear that the demon didn't seem to fear these things. Instead, it threatened to kill the officer, and also kill Jenny's sister Abby. So Abby immediately went to ask Jenny what was going on, but Jenny said she didn't know either. When she woke up, she found herself being held by the officer, sitting inside a circle made of salt. From this, Crane deduced that the demon might be afraid of salt, so they watched the video again and found that during the exorcism, the officer had spoken a passage in ancient Greek. After analyzing the audio, they found that the name Ansidif was mentioned, so they immediately searched for information. They learned that Ansidif was a type of demon that could control others through physical contact. The officer had recorded in the materials that they had once used a type of lantern to send it back to hell. Now it seemed that only that kind of lantern could control the demon. At this moment, Jenny suddenly remembered. She had seen this lantern before at a friend's house. There was no time to waste, so they immediately went to find the lantern. At this time, the sheriff had already taken his family to hide in the deep mountains. He had even invited a priest to set up a protective spell formation. Just when he thought everything was safe, the demon had quietly possessed one of the bodyguards and destroyed the spell formation. It sneaked into the sheriff's daughter's room. By the time the sheriff realized something was wrong, the demon had already transferred into his daughter's body. The priest tried to drive away the demon with a cross, but the demon merely lifted its hand and snapped the priest's neck. It then grabbed the sheriff's wife and threatened him to bring the Bible. The sheriff had to agree to the demon's demand, but when they arrived at the archives, they found that Crane had already taken the Bible away. The demon immediately grabbed the wife by the neck and slapped the sheriff, sending him flying. At this critical moment, Abby and Jenny arrived just in time. They distracted the demon with conversation, while Crane, holding the lantern, quietly snuck around to its back. Taking advantage of the demon's inattention, he surrounded it with salt, then he held up the lantern and chanted an incantation. Before disappearing, the demon said that their plan had already begun, and darkness would eventually engulf the world. In this way, the demon was sent back to hell once again. The sheriff's daughter regained consciousness successfully, but what Crane had to face seemed to be far more complicated than this. The first season of Sleepy Hollow presents a bold modern adaptation of Washington Irving's classic 1820 short story *The Legend of Sleepy Hollow*. It shifts the story's setting from the 18th century to the modern day, incorporating elements of time travel, religious prophecies, and the supernatural. In the show, a soldier from the American Revolutionary War, Ichabod Crane, after beheading the Headless Horseman on the battlefield, falls into a mysterious 250-year slumber. He awakens in a modern-day town, and teams up with police officer Abby Mills to stop the impending apocalypse together. The greatest success of Sleepy Hollow Season 1 lies in its eclectic mix of elements. The show blends multiple genres, including history, fantasy, horror, and crime, ranging from the American Revolutionary War to the Book of Revelation in the Bible, from witchcraft to modern police crime solving. This bold fusion ensures that each episode offers new highlights, and the audience can never guess what supernatural phenomenon will appear next. The show's time travel premise isn't just a mere gimmick, but a source of humor derived from cultural clashes. Ichabod's process of adapting to modern society generates many funny moments, such as his surprise at a black woman serving as a police officer, and his confusion when faced with modern technology. These lighthearted moments balance the show's dark tone, preventing the overall viewing experience from becoming too heavy. Tom Mizen's portrayal of Ichabod Crane is the absolute highlight of the show. Not only is he handsome in appearance, but he also creates a character who embodies classical gentlemanly manners, while also being able to adapt to the modern world as a hero. In contrast, Nicole Behary's portrayal of the female lead, Abby, sparked some controversy. Some viewers thought she was not beautiful enough, but the character's inherent intelligence and strength make up for the controversy surrounding her appearance. The supporting cast is equally outstanding, especially John Cho as Andy Brooks. Although he has limited screen time, he leaves a deep impression. Sheriff Frank Irving represents the voice of reason and reality, providing a balance to the supernatural plotlines. Sleepy Hollow Season 1 adopts a format that combines standalone episodes with an overarching main plot. Each episode resolves a separate mysterious incident, while advancing the overall story of the impending apocalypse. This structure not only satisfies viewers who enjoy standalone stories, but also maintains the coherence and momentum of the series' overarching plot. Kevin Riley, chairman of Fox Entertainment, personally decided to limit the first season to 13 episodes, demonstrating the network's emphasis on the show's narrative pacing. This limitation turned out to be an advantage for the show, allowing it to focus on presenting its most exciting content in a short period. Sleepy Hollow excels in its visual presentation, especially considering the budget constraints of a television series. The design of the Headless Horseman is not only faithful to the original legend, but also incorporates modern horror elements. The creation of supernatural scenes in the show is also unconventional, from the pale and terrifying horseman of death to various twisted monsters, all demonstrating the production team's dedication to visual effects. The bold historical reconstruction in Sleepy Hollow Season 1 is impressive. The show skillfully weaves together the history of America's founding with the mythology of the Book of Revelation. George Washington is no longer just the image of a founding father from textbooks, but transformed into a complex character who battles supernatural forces. This creative freedom gives historical figures a new space for interpretation. The show also explores the gray area between good and evil, as depicted in the plot. Evil triumphs precisely because good and justice stand by and do nothing. This theme also resonates in contemporary society, elevating the show beyond mere entertainment. The production team didn't let historical elements become a burden, but instead used them as a tool to drive the plot forward. Ichabod's knowledge of the past becomes the key to solving modern crises, and his personal involvement in historical events provides a unique perspective. The success of Sleepy Hollow Season 1 is no accident. It breaks the boundaries of traditional genre TV shows, skillfully blending history, fantasy, horror, and crime elements. The concise 13-episode format ensures a brisk pace, with almost no redundant content. Although some of the show's settings seem absurd, Tom Mizen's excellent acting and character portrayal, along with the standalone monster stories in each episode, and the balance with the overarching main plot throughout the season, have made Sleepy Hollow a dark horse among American TV shows in that year's fall lineup.